Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Spoil Me, covering One Piece, episodes 341 and 342. Nami in Big Trouble, the Zombie Mansion and the Invisible Man, and... hold on a second, guys. Hold on, give it to me. Mystery of the Zombies, Hogback's Nightmarish Research Laboratory. In these episodes, we get some really fun, classic, running around a haunted house kind of antics that I truly love, and it's just exactly my vibe. And unfortunately, it's punctuated with something truly awful that is the exact opposite of my vibe that I hated with all of my parts. Welcome to Spoil Me. Welcome to the show, everyone. I am Natasha. Thank you very much to the One Piece crew for commissioning this episode. What's up, One Piece crew? How you doing out there? I am starting this super late because of tech problems, so if there are tech problems in this recording, please forgive me. I don't know what my GarageBand is going to do today, but who knows? This whole couple of episodes, I can't remember who it was last week, but somebody called Thriller Bark Scooby-Doo Island. And yeah, this is a super Scooby-Doo-ish episode. And I mean that in the best way. I really love this haunted house aesthetic. How classically everything, it's all, a One Piece version of a thing. It's all Oda's take on whatever trope you've got going on, but it's all falls within that. We've literally got Nami wandering up and down dark hallways holding a candelabra. The only thing that would have been more hilarious is if she wound up wearing some long filmy white gauzy dress and was somehow there was maybe a thunderstorm, something to add a little exterior ambiance. But otherwise, we have got ghosts. We have got zombies. We have got paintings that come alive. We have got haunted jack-in-the-boxes. We have got fireplaces with secret entrances that spin around. We have got, once again, hands coming up out of graves. We have it all, and I really, really enjoyed this. So, I am going to just get this out of the way. I'm sure nobody will be surprised at all. But it's interesting because episode 341 on the One Piece wiki, which I occasionally will go to just see the title, it says Nami in Big Trouble. Whereas on Funimation, the title is Nami's in a Major Pinch. And I feel like the Nami's in a Major Pinch title feels like a little bit more pointed and euphemistic. And I wish that it just said Big Trouble on mine as well. But you guys, we start things off in episode 341 with Nami taking a shower, which is already a super weird thing. She's taking a shower because she feels like she smells like zombies and doesn't want to anymore, which I understand in theory, but I just feel like that would be so low priority for me in the current circumstances that I cannot emphasize enough how unwilling to get naked I would be in a place like this. But she, of course, has to be the one taking the shower. She, of course, has to be naked for what happens next. And that is getting assaulted by an invisible man who threatens her and tells her how good fear looks on her and how much he likes that, while he is holding her pinned to the wall with his hand over her mouth, while her friends are outside. And when she asks for help and they come in, the only thing Usopp can do is ogle her being naked. And then, to really put the cherry on top of this rapey Sunday, we have Usopp telling her later that he doesn't believe her. I really want that all to sink in, you guys. I really want to back up here, and I want you all to take a second and think about that whole collection of things happening together the way that they do. She just doesn't need to be naked for this whole thing to be creepy and scary. We don't need the fear looks good on you and him clearly groping her, even though it's not explicitly shown. It's very clearly happening. And to then have it be that Usopp is in denial about the creepy stuff that's happening. And so he decides to play it off that it didn't happen and she was imagining things. What are you doing? Genuinely, what are you doing? This is so awful from top to bottom. And I am so grossed out at the fact that it keeps being a thing. And I know it's never going to stop because that is apparently the nature of this particular beast. But Nami being hypersexualized at every opportunity is getting so old. And I am going to need some sort of button to press every time it happens to just have me saying the same shit that I said last time, because it's never going to be new. I'm never going to have a new exciting take. It's always going to be, this is gross and unnecessary. Why are you doing it? Every time. And I this whole thing too that kills me is how and I'm not positive that this is a direct reference, but for those who there have been a few different episodes of various podcasts I've covered where I've talked about some of the worst movies I've ever seen and movies that I almost just walked out of in the theater, didn't make it to the end. I've never actually walked out of a movie that I can remember, but the one that got me the closest to walking out was Hollow Man with Kevin Bacon, which is an Invisible Man movie. And it has a similarly gratuitous rape scene. And you don't actually it's not confirmed that he raped her, but it's implied. And the whole scene is him, of course, invisible, in a woman's bedroom who is young and gorgeous and of course topless. And he grabs her and pins her to the bed. And then the camera just cuts away to a different scene. And I think it's very clear what they're saying happened. And so that scene, even way back when I saw that movie, and I must have been 16 years old, if that, even back then I was oh my God, really? Come on. So to see this kind of thing again, and in a show like this, where everything is lighthearted and goofy and fun, and then you have to fuck it up with this? And for what? What kind of payoff is there even? It's just, again, I do not think that there would be anything lost by her being clothed and her friends be leaving her. I really don't. And it's just always one of those things where, like, you try and put a male character in this situation, like have it be Usopp who's being assaulted, and all of a sudden, well, that's too dark. That's really weird. Yeah, isn't it? Isn't it? Like, come on. Anyway. Seraphim says, I need to start setting alarms for this. I see we are at that part. Brian says there are a couple more questionable scenes in the future, but it never gets this bad again. I want to believe you. I feel like somebody said that before about the scene where everybody gets nosebleeds peeking at her in the bath. And here we are now. But I want to believe you. So, you know, I have to, it's such a long part of this episode that if it weren't so incredibly, there even could have been a way to do this where it's genuinely scary, but it's done in such a gratuitous way. It's so clearly meant to be titillating, and that's the part that I find really offensive. This is the sort of thing with Game of Thrones as well, where people were just like, well, but rape was a fact of life, and if you don't show it, then you're shying away from things. And I'm like, yeah, but we don't need to see a woman bent over with her titties bouncing and crying. Like, I can understand that a rape took place without you putting a whole thing on screen. And that is the way it feels here, where Nami is like, when Usopp comes in, for refreshing people's memories if you don't recall or if you haven't watched this recently, when Usopp comes in because she's crying out for help, the camera does that thing where there's like a gong and it jumps from one like frame to another. Dum, dum, dum. And the frames are her tits, her bare stomach, and her crotch. Literally zoomed in, filling the screen. It's by far the worst this show has been. And I can't believe, I really can't get over the fact that this sort of thing just used to be part of our collective accepted storytelling device, and we just didn't see a problem with it. Like, when you stop and think about it, like, how fucked up is that? That there was probably a time where almost nobody was bothered by this. And I'm sure if I had watched this back when, I probably would have been like, I don't like this, but I can't put my finger on why. Like, I wouldn't have had the words to really explain. And probably a lot of people would be like, you're being too sensitive. It's just a cartoon. It's just funny, whatever. And I just think about that all the time, that there were probably some folks all along that were just like, this is super uncool, right? About so many things. And we're just told, lighten up. Oh my God, you just want to ruin everything. Everything has to be PC for you. And like, people are doing that these days, but there's so much more of a groundswell against that kind of voice now, that those people are the ones that I mock. And I'm not too proud to tell you all, I'm not sure that I wouldn't have been one of the people telling somebody to lighten up way back when. So anyway, y'all know I had to talk about this. It is just, and I'm realizing Florian said last week that there was something that, when I did the live, they're all lives, the wannabe. I think, Florian, you said something about how you want me to just be myself and go for it. And I think that probably you were referring to this. And considering that this invisible man is, as our resident, like, wacky, mad scientist doctor put it, is a skirt chaser and has mentioned Robin also. I'm going to assume this shit isn't over. You know, that there's probably some other, and I'm going to assume, hopefully, that his introduction was the most over the top part. And after this, it's not going to ever be this like explicit again. But clearly him like wanting to make Nami his bride somehow is going to be an ongoing subplot, which I am not excited about at all. So, and it's also like the fact that he was spying on her comes as absolutely no surprise to Hogback, who basically predicts that's what happened, because he hears, I think Usopp like uses one of his gunpowder balls to get rid of the dude, and Hogback is down in the dining room and he hears it. And is like, oh man, did he do it again? Like, clearly knows that this being is around and he has a history of doing this sort of thing. Which, I want to be like grossed out by, but frankly, Hogback is obviously such a fucking maniac that I'm not surprised he just lets the sexual assaulter continue sexually assaulting. What are you gonna do? Am I right? Seraphim says the animes need to draw things out really does not help either. This whole scene was just 2 pages in the manga and framed a lot less fan servicey. That's too bad. It's too bad, you guys. I don't like being in this headspace, because otherwise these episodes are so much fun. You know, it's such a shame that this cast a pall over everything. But, okay, we're going to get past it. But, she doesn't get out of the shower and, like, feel safe for, I think it's about a full, like, 6 or 7 minute scene. So it's not, I mean, in an episode that's a total of like 18 minutes long, that's a lot of the episode. So, okay. We're going to go now back to the Sunny, and Zoro is like looking around at their situation and the fact that they got caught up in this weird web, as did the mini Mary. And he's just thinking about how obvious it is that this is a trap and that they are being like maneuvered in such a way that there is only one way that they can get in, and that is via this like front gate. So in his opinion, the very fact that somebody is trying to get them to go a certain direction is in itself a real bad sign. And we should just err on the side of not doing whatever this anonymous person wants us to do, because I am not thinking they're doing it for our benefit. But he looks down and sees that Luffy is already like about to walk through the gates. I really do enjoy when Zoro is like figuring all this out, talking about this, the trap and how obvious it is. He is sort of talking to himself. So then when the camera moves, Luffy says something like, "What are you doing just muttering up there?" And I like whenever there's a moment in a TV show where it seems as if something is happening, like maybe inside somebody's head, or one of my favorite ones is when the music seems like it's being played over the scene by the sound designers, but then the camera pulls back and there's like an actual guitarist sitting next to our main character playing it. Those kinds of moments are always fun. And so this moment with Zoro talking to himself, I really thought he was talking to his friends. So when the camera pulls out and we see how far they are from him and he has been talking to himself the whole time, and it's not the way this joke has been done, where you think you're talking to your friends because you've turned your back and haven't noticed that they've all walked away. it's just how, it's not like that. It's how Zoro operates, that he does sort of just talk to himself. He's very insular, you know? So when he says to Luffy, are you seriously just going to walk into this extremely obvious trap? Luffy, in a moment of real beauty, says, yeah, pretty much. You all, I really thought we were going to get a trap. What do you mean? No. Nope. It's just, yeah. What do you, of course I am. I'm not really seeing the problem. Can you, elaborate what you think the problem is here? I fucking cracked up. I am not gonna lie. And then follows up with, we haven't got anything better to do. That for me, that was a real winner. Just, I mean, you know, I can't find fault with that argument. That's pretty solid. So this bit just was so good. And he basically throws his hat in and is just like, yeah, all right, I guess. So they wind up coming across the fucking Cerberus, which Luffy immediately is like, I would like to eat it, which is a really weird reaction. Like, I am willing to accept him feeling this way about sea creatures, because anything that isn't a mammal always feels a little bit more like I'm really willing to immediately see it as food. And even some mammals, a giant pig, for instance, or something, I can still be like, well, yeah, okay, roast that bitch up. I get it. But these are 2 wolves and a fox. And it just doesn't feel like the thing you jump to, even if you are a huge, like, meat eater. It just doesn't feel like the kind of creature you look at and think, I bet that would be good. And I bet they aren't good. From what I understand, eating predator animals is a very different, like, experience than eating animals that are omnivores or herbivores. And I am not feeling like, there was some study, I remember this one of those little sort of memes that's gone around where it's a couple of paragraphs that were cut together, and it was somebody talking about how a person asked some scientists what a T-Rex would taste like, and they did some analysis of what a predator that size, what their body composition would be like. And they figured out that a T-Rex would be the kind of animal that consumes so much prey and is sort of, has like such a, what's the word I want? Not even sophisticated, but just an efficient digestive system and liver to filter, that it would be able to handle extreme amounts of protein and probably certain like carbons and heavy metals that would have been in the atmosphere and the soil at the time, that likely a T-Rex's flesh would have been essentially poisonous to eat. That if a person did indeed kill a T-Rex and try and eat it, if they had anything close to our present day physiology, it would kill them. And that is just immediately what I'm thinking of with these wolves, is just like, dude, you don't want to eat those. I feel like that's going to be really bad for you. I mean, obviously you don't want to eat them because these bitches were dead at one point. Like, I fully believe that they were brought back to life, and so probably you don't want to eat them for that reason also. But even if they were just regular ass normal wolves. So anyway, he like kind of gets these creatures off guard by asking whether or not that he can eat them. And they stand there staring at him in this dejected kind of manner, and their tail droops, and Luffy kind of comes at them and does this like little bark, and they back away from him. And eventually it gets to the point where he's like, well, obviously this thing is going to be our pet and I am going to tame it. And he goes up to them and tries to do like, oh, who's a good boys? And I love this. He just says a good boy, but then ends it plural. Who's a good boys? They chomp different parts of his body at the same time, to which he has no reaction because as a rubber man, I guess it just doesn't do anything. And he gets them to let him go very easy, very soft, very gentle. And then he says, now sit. And he basically, it seems as if he punches them or body slams them and they go down. And that, for him, at least, is mission accomplished. It is now tame, which is, don't you just wish training a dog was that easy? But that is not how it works. But yeah, this Cerberus winds up becoming Luffy's horse, basically. And we see them all, like, walking into that big graveyard, and he is just riding on its back. And it looks so sad, you guys. I would be all about this if the Cerberus seemed as if he were, like, kind of interested and excited. But he just seems really downtrodden and discouraged. And I really felt bad for him. So they're walking through the fog. And I love this. Robin says something about how they're... you know, they may as well be going in circles because of this fog. Who knows? And fucking Sanji says something like, if we hadn't brought Mosshead, maybe we'd be fine. As if to indicate that the very presence of Zoro means it's more likely you're gonna get lost. Like he's a bad luck charm. Which I kind of enjoy that interpretation. It makes it a little bit more legendary that Zoro is so easy to get lost that he misinterprets directions or forgets them that quickly. The idea that it's just like maybe there was like a curse laid on him at some point. So now not only is he always lost, but and has like no sense of direction, but also anybody around him also gets lost. I don't know. I just found that really funny. So this is when our friends turn a corner and they come across that weird sort of mummified unicorn pouring, I am guessing, sake for a tree with a man's face and arms attached, and also legs, but his legs are much less human looking. I guess the feet are really the least human looking part. And all of these people stop dead. And I love Luffy. A tree with a geezer's face is totally getting drunk with a beat up unicorn. I appreciate that summary because it's so weird a tableau, and hearing it said out loud, it's no less weird. There's something very like validating about you say it out loud. No, that sounds fucking crazy out loud also. So yeah, these two are just like sitting there, and all of a sudden we cut to Frankie chasing the unicorn, saying that he's going to make a wish on it, whether it likes it or not. And Luffy is trying to chase down the tree, and he has his net aloft, so I'm assuming that this was to make him a pet. But eventually, he does corner them and try and convince them to become members of the crew, which, of course, his present members are much, much less enthusiastic about. I do really like the voice of the tree. he's just like, no, leave me alone. What are you doing, kid? Like, he's genuinely, I just wanted to have a drink with my friend and go home. And the fact that Luffy asks these guys to also join the crew, he just needs to have a little more discernment about throwing this invitation out there. I'm just saying. So, let's see. We have the conversation between Hogback and Absalom. Is that his name? The Invisible Man? Absalom? I can't remember how it's pronounced. The conversation between the two of them is sort of weird because, like, Absalom, you see his silhouette. So it's like he is invisible, but is, like, it seems like he can control when he's invisible, in other words. And we find out here something kind of interesting. Absalom is saying that he wants to take Nami and make her his wife or whatever. And Hogback is like, I understand that this is your normal MO, but you can't do that with this one because she is worth way too much. And he's like, what do you mean? And Hogback says their bounties add up to something like 600 million berries, which, it honestly just never even entered my mind for a moment that we would have to be worried about this guy in particular handing them over. I just thought a man like this is going to, in the tradition of like a cartoon mad doctor, would be wanting new victims to experiment on. And the fact that he just needs the money, or wants the money, but I'm going to put it with needs because he seems like the kind of guy that uses real rare ingredients and equipment for things that need a lot of upkeep and replacing. So probably he's working on a budget that's like very high, and he needs to have some income source to supplement all of his research and experimentation. So it makes a lot of sense that he would be after money. It just did not occur to me I didn't think that this even seemed like the sort of place where you would find out that there were bounties out there. Does he get like a paper delivered? Like what? We have seen a paper delivery system in Alabasta in that arc, right? Was that the one where it's like a stork and an otter deliver it? There's a real weird sequence there that I kind of half remember. But I just feel like that sort of delivery system, I don't see them coming to this island. Not even necessarily because it's so far out, but it's just not their vibe. And this is the kind of island where you toss that paper off your ship deck and keep going. You don't stop and pull up to the front door. So, yeah, he tells Absalom, stay the fuck away from Nami because we are going to need her. And then we have the whole thing in the hallway where she is talking to Usopp about how obviously shit, like, he saw her being lifted off the ground. How could he not believe her? He thinks that, like, he has to pretend that he didn't see anything because what she's concerned with is the fact that he saw her naked. So he has got to lie in order to help her save face. It's a really weird, like, convoluted thing that he's got going on. But anyway, what this boils down to is them both kind of saying to Chopper, this place is fucked up and you have to know that Hogback is behind all of this. And Chopper not only is completely failing to use any of his intelligence, but says to Nami, well, why don't we just go ask Dr. Hogback about it? How does that sound? And stalks off, and there's a pause. And then Usopp says, that sounds like a really, really bad idea. And I was like, thank you. You don't go up to the person you think is guilty of a thing when they own the house, know the grounds, have all the weapons on their side, and tell them you suspect them of a giant, heinous crime, and ask their perspective on it. Like, that's, for me... Chopper, what are you doing, babe? He's just in such hero worship mode at the moment. And it's so weird because he's like, how could you think that? And I'm like, this man literally told you at dinner that he is working on bringing the dead back to life, sir. He said it. And you told him with your mouth that you supported those efforts and that research. And now you're acting like them, suggesting that he might have something to do with the zombification of what looks to be every living thing on this island. You're acting all offended over it. What are you talking about, bruh? Like, get it together. So this basically leads to them finding their way back to the main room where they had dinner, only now everything is in darkness. There is no indication that this room has been used recently at all, and they can't find their host, and everything is just feeling real weird. And then all of a sudden, one of the candelabras flares to life, and there's Hildon, and he is just chilling like a bat the way he does. I am going to say once again that Hildon looks like a cereal mascot. And also, guys, I really love him. Like, I think Hildon might be one of my favorite character designs of the show. There are certain characters that are like, have interesting elements, but the elements are put together in a way that I'm like, this feels like it doesn't make any visual sense. And then there's Hildon, who all of him just seems to go together. He's got that perfectly spherical body, a head with like a nose that feels extremely round and eyes that are extremely round. Then that's all sort of like offset by the real spiky hair coming up from the top of his head and the real spiky teeth coming down from the inside of his mouth. So those like really balance each other. And then you've got the giant bat wings with his like little hands at the ends of them so that he has to stand with his arms crossed in front of himself like he's a bat. And those things look really good together wrapped around his like mummified body. So he's got an odd like combo of elements of a mummy and a Dracula going on. And then the fact that he's got that big bottle on his back just adds a little bit of intrigue. You know, like, this guy isn't as simple as just being a weird Dracula man. He also has some kind of agenda with this bottle of God knows what. If they made like a little figure of him, I wouldn't be mad at having it as like a Halloween decoration. I know that there'd be plenty of people out there who would use it as a year-round decoration. I don't get down like that. I appreciate those who do, but it's not for me. But it would make a pretty good stuffy, you know, like one of those little squishmallows of him, I think would look really good. So anyway, he is trying to convince them that everything is fine and won't they just follow him to their guest rooms? To which, understandably, our friends are like, you cannot be fucking serious. Are you really thinking that after everything, we're just gonna fucking go lay down and go to sleep under your roof? Is that likely? What are you thinking? And he starts to get genuinely sad. Like, you can see his eyes he's just downcast. He starts to sweat. There's a whole sensation of him trying to fix whatever like misunderstanding, as he puts it, has happened to cause them to turn on him, which I am not entirely sure what the motive was. He says something about when they accuse him of leaving them in that cemetery. First, he tries to say that he just had to pee really bad, and so he forgot and left them there. It's just, I'm not really sure why he left them there. Because part of me was like, well, maybe you just hoped they would die. But if you want them to be dead, you could probably have killed them any number of ways by now. What was it the zombies would do that you couldn't do yourself? I'm not really sure what the point was of that, but maybe we'll see. And then we hear a woman's voice chiming in as he's like, well, let me see what I can get the doctor to say about it. She says, you've bungled it, and now I have to take care of it. And he starts to sweat even more and insisting to this disembodied voice, no, I got it. I'll just take them up to their rooms. It'll be fine. And then the camera pulls out, and there is a weird painting of a woman whose face is stitched together. And she says, I think it's a little late for that. And I'm over here, watching this episode like, oh, sweet, we have live paintings. I'm all about it. And that was like off the bat. But then when everybody starts to be like, oh my God, a talking painting, what the fuck? Very rightfully so. She then stretches her neck so that her head is out of the frame on the end of a very long neck. And then turns to look at them. You guys, this is by far the creepiest thing this show has ever done. Her just stretching her neck is so unnerving. I mean, and it didn't really, I didn't stop to think about it because I had said about what a classic trope it is to have paintings that are like watching you from the walls that move. But I've never really thought about what the payoff is supposed to be in the end of paintings that are alive. And I guess the idea was, oh, what if you like wound up inside the painting, like trapped in there? Like, what if those people weren't even just painted, but they were somehow imprisoned in there? But I never really took it to the next step where it's like, what if somebody from the painting comes out of it and grabs you and starts to pull you into it? And so I don't even want to call what happens next a trope exactly, because I'm not sure if it falls under that category. But she grabs Chopper and starts to drag him toward her. And I genuinely was like freaking out a little bit because I was thinking, are we going to get like a 2D Chopper in the show, that's like been flattened out because he's in the painting? What are we? So Nami goes after Chopper, and she manages to get there before this woman fully pulls him in, if that was what she was intending to do. It's, again, unclear. And she's struggling with the woman in the painting to get Chopper back as Usopp looks over his shoulder and there's a pig's head on the wall with a couple of swords balanced over its head in a kind of decoration. And it chucks a sword at him. And as he's saying this, that there's like, threatening taxidermy back here, Nami, he looks down and there is an eye opening on the bearskin rug that one of the swords landed in, which this bear apparently takes exception to. And he stands up and is like, who the hell put a damn sword in my back? So it's a pretty fun sequence where basically everything with a face in the room, from statue type things to this, rug to the paintings, all come alive. And we've got Usopp, who manages to get away from the bear, and he's clinging to the candelabra. He grabs a candle off of it and chucks it at the bear, and it lights him on fire. And then all of the other paintings really go nuts and start to talk about how he has, one of them says, "Oh, the rugmanity." I was like, really, guys? The carpet itself is doing a real Austin Powers sort of reference. I can't believe this. You threw a candle at me? Who does that? And I was thinking, man, I really wonder about the release date of this episode and the release date of Austin Powers. I'm just asking questions. But this moment is when things really just basically hit the fan. And we go into the next episode with everybody being chased in various parts of the island. We've got these three being chased down the hallway. They eventually wind up with the fireplace that turns them into a different room. And they are able to hide from these creatures there because they hold it shut. But there's already a zombie on the other side. So it's not as safe as one could wish. And then they wind up in this weird bedroom. And it's got all of these pictures on the wall of this girl that they saw earlier with her name is Victoria something, but she is the one that has the grudge against dishes and dishware. And at first they're like, is this her room? That doesn't really make sense because you don't just have a million pictures of yourself in your own room. So Nami picks up a photo album or a scrapbook. It's a scrapbook. And there are all of these different articles in there about Victoria Chindri. Okay, Chindri is her last name. And she was like this really well-known actress. And then she reaches an article where there was an accident and apparently she died. But they all saw her walking around and talking and, it takes them a really long time to think through the fact that she had a very different personality and that she had like big obvious stitches on her face. So once they figure this out and they start to put two and two together about the fact that these are like all reanimated dead creatures on this island, they're like, well, we really need to get out of here. And fucking Nami, in the midst of all this, spots what looks like a treasure chest behind Usopp, and she can't let it go. She can't just be like, I have better shit to think about right now. Because in her opinion, she doesn't. If it's treasure, it trumps literally everything else. So she insists that they open it, which results in this giant, terrifying Jack-in-the-Box popping out. And even after a giant, terrifying Jack-in-the-Box pops out and scares the living daylights out of them, even then, when they're running away, Nami is thinking to herself, wow, he said there's no treasure in this room. Interesting wording. That sounds like there is treasure in another room. And I'm like, girl, that's not what that sounds like. I am sure because it's being brought up, that's going to be what it turns out to mean. Because for the show, sure. But I would not have interpreted it that way at all. And it just feels like, girl, this is not the time. All right. You're running for your life for like the third time today. Just stop worrying about the treasure. That's not your priority right now. And as they flee down the hall, we have a couple of the guys in different paintings coming out to try and scare them and grab them. And they get interrupted by this dude, Ryuma, I think is the name. And he is wearing those like wooden platform sandals that I think are like called like rice paddy sandals, something like that. And he is very skeleton-like. I don't know that he's really just a skeleton because he looks like he's got some skin clinging to him still, but he is definitely like in the kind of shape where he should not be alive anymore. And he is saying, I will take care of this, guys from the paintings. Don't worry about it. Go back to bed. I'm on it. And is really confident with it. So clearly he has done this shit before. And I am not excited about this for them. Because, I mean, our friends are, like, real cute and everything, but they're not up for it. So, we wind up, we go back first to the Straw Hats that are with Luffy as they're exploring this forest. And they're arguing about who gets to be invited to the crew. And Sanji calls Frankie a robot. And Frankie says, I'm not a robot. I'm a cyborg. How many times do I have to tell you? To which Sanji says to Frankie, I don't care what you call yourself, you're still a pervert. To which Frankie grins and says, oh, so you do understand me after all. And it was such a puzzling exchange because I haven't seen Frankie seem like a pervert, really. And Sanji, you are the biggest pervert. Who are you calling pervert, sir, Sanji? That's you. What are you talking about? I just really no self-awareness from that young man. None at all. So this is when Robin starts to point out that, like, all of the creatures they've been running into have these weird stitches or they have bandages, and they definitely all have numbers written on their side. And she's assuming this means that they are all working for the same guy. And as they're talking about this, all of a sudden, these ghosts appear. This is such a weird little sequence, y'all, because I don't know what they sound like in the original. I am thinking that I'm going to try and go over and hear it. But somebody finally says they're saying negative. I think it's Robin. In the dub, it sounds for all the world like they're saying nicotine. It is so weird. It is not the kind of pronunciation of negative that feels like it was written or said by people who speak English as their native language. So I don't know if that's like the actual same sound that they used in the original, or if it was dubbed and they say something different in the original, but it's negative, like that. I'm pronouncing the V too much. It's like barely even there. I didn't know what the fuck they were saying until Robin points it out. And what happens with these guys is they fly through you and cause this deep depression. Like a depression isn't even an adequate word. It's like a total despair. And it's coupled with a self-loathing. Which, honestly, do any of us need more of this in our lives? Like, I feel like we're good. We can all just imagine. Thanks. How this goes. No more necessary. And it happens first to Frankie, then it happens to Luffy. Both Sanji and Zoro are watching this and like rolling their eyes a little bit, and Zoro says something about how if they were just more disciplined, they would be able to like get past this and not let it affect them so much. And then one of them goes through him and he winds up completely crumpling as well. And I really, really did appreciate that because y'all, again, how many of us have been told as people who struggle maybe with depression, maybe with, highs and lows of like mania, that it's just our lack of discipline. And if we tried hard enough and were simply better people, that we would be able to counteract it and not experience this at all. It's a really common, it's the sort of thing that like Owen has struggled with this his whole life, and he saw his mother share some meme that was like, these are antidepressants, and it was a photo of a pair of sneakers and a forest. And then a photo of pills, and it said, this is shit. Which is just, you're so ignorant. Oh my God. Anybody sharing that is just an ignoramus. That's all there is to it. Depression is a very real thing. Medications are very real things. And the whole like, well, everybody's on medication these days, we can't all be depressed. Yes, we can, because we live in a capitalist hellscape. Yes, we can all be depressed, you guys. Because human beings were not meant to live like this. It was never supposed to be like this. We have done this to ourselves, certainly. Does that make it any less real? No, it does not. It sure doesn't. So, anyway, I appreciated that Zorro falls prey to these things just as readily as his friends, and he has no armor against it whatsoever. It does seem to wear off fairly quickly, because we cut to them renewed and yelling at the ghosts. Basically, all of them are like enraged at how the ghosts made them feel, and they have a vendetta now. Sanji is yelling at Zorro about how he's going to call him dog food from now on, and then says, wait, sorry, you said you weren't even good enough to be dog food, and then starts cracking up, and Zorro is very annoyed. I can't lie though, Zorro is such a like cool customer all the time that I really do appreciate them having something to laugh at about him, So we go back to our friends in the castle. Oh my God. No, wait, hold on. Before we go back, we come across this weird graveyard, and Luffy sees a zombie climbing up out of the graveyard. And you guys, what does this man do? He walks over to the zombie with a kind of like expression on his face, like when if you were to go somewhere and see a picture frame crooked on the wall. There's no fear. There's no real sense of wonder about it. It's more just a kind of like, let me just fix that real quick. And he walks up to this zombie and just begins to shove him back into his grave, which is truly the number one, bar none, best reaction to seeing a zombie I have ever heard of in my life. I can't stress to you guys enough how my mind was blown by this reaction. If you had given me a little, like, a pad and paper and said, write down 10 reactions you could imagine Luffy having to a zombie, this wouldn't have been on there at all. It would not have entered my mind as a possibility. It simply wouldn't be anywhere in my radar. I am so delighted by this. I really want it to be like a GIF. Him seeing it and walking over and trying to shove it back into its grave. I will never not love this. This is just the best moment. It is just perfect. It's so good. So then the zombie yells at him not to put him back in the ground, jackass, which is, I think, the first time that we've heard the zombies talk. No, we didn't, because they talked about how the fire was really like dangerous and irresponsible. So yeah, we've heard them talk before. I forgot. So he leaps up, and when he leaps up, it results in like a bunch of other zombies coming up out of their graves in these sort of superhero poses. They're flying through the air. They're doing kicks and these leaps and everything. And Sanji says, like, are zombies normally this, like, active? And they start coming for our crew, which, of course, the reaction that Nami and Usopp and Chopper had is very different to the reaction that our friends here are having. They are up for it. They are very excited to fight these zombies, and they make pretty quick work of them. It's not a problem. And just relish this fight. All about it. So, okay. That fight is happening, and then we go back to the castle. And Nami, Usopp, and Chopper have stumbled across the doorway to the mysterious laboratory. And they see Dr. Hogback, and he is down there by a table, and he is talking about creating a marionette. And it's this dude that's like laying on the table that he's like stitching together. He's doing something with him. Obviously like trying to bring him to life, but I don't know how this is different from the many other things that he's brought to life. And Victoria is there saying, I hope the stupid thing blows up and burns your face off, with no change of expression. She says that she brought him some food, and then she dumps this bag. It's like a Ziploc baggie of spaghetti soup like onto the table, which later in the background, when our friends are talking in the foreground, you can hear Hogback telling her not to worry, he'll just slurp it off the table. As long as it's not on the floor, it's fair game, basically, which was truly an inspired little bit of business to be happening in the background. But yeah, so our friends are watching this, and they're trying to figure out like what the deal is with this woman, Victoria, having been brought back, and what it is that he is attempting to do. And as they're watching, thinking like, well, maybe we can find our way out of here from here, they hear footsteps behind them. And they turn around, and there is that weird skeleton-ish sort of figure. And he makes the same sort of laugh that Brooke made. It's very, very similar. And of course, he has in some ways the same appearance that Brooke had. But Chopper is the one who's like, well, that's definitely not Brooke though, right? And this dude is clearly here, as he puts it, to like shepherd them back to where they're supposed to be. But there's something about his like real stillness and his lack of rush that's very intimidating. I have a feeling this is going to be a difficult customer to handle. But he has hair, and he's got a little bit of skin, I think. So he's not entirely a skeleton. And that's the end of the episode. Camera pulls out. We get to see the like exterior of this big weird castle. And that is it. So I'm going to wrap up. But thank you guys so much for hanging out with me. Appreciate you all a lot. Appreciate you also bearing with me being late. And until next time, toodaloo, motherfuckers.
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.